Hello and welcome to Tech Doctors, the podcast where we examine the latest technology news from a deeply engineering centric perspective. I'm Mike Ali, who, along with fellow tech doctorate Greg Martin and our MBA buddy Rob Haywood, thank you for joining our discussion. We will work hard to separate facts from opinion and hype from reality. We hope that you'll find our podcast informative and fun. So let's get started. This week, Rob is out, but we have a special guest to discuss the possibility that Figure AI's humanoid robotics aren't as ready for plant use as they've been saying, how AI is fueling a office real estate recovery in San Francisco, and a bet that VC firm Thrive Capital is making on IT services driven by AI.
Okay, well, welcome to Tech Doctors, the podcast that we're figuring out as we go through it. Today we have a very special guest that I'll talk about in a bit. I'm Greg Martin, and I'll be your host today due to Rob being unavailable. I'm joined by the volatile combative Mike, our own personal antagonist, and today's very special guest, Paul Turner. Dr. Paul Turner, Managing Director of AI Insights Consulting Limited, is a 30-plus year veteran of applied artificial intelligence for process optimization, Industry 4.0, and digital transformation at scale. He has over 60 publications that include patents, peer-reviewed academic journal papers, book contributions, industry white papers, and conference papers. He currently works with startups, top-tier consulting firms, and leading manufacturers to help them navigate the rapidly evolving opportunities of enterprise artificial intelligence. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Mike. Pleasure to be here.
So we got a full agenda today. We have
I'd just like to state at the outset that Greg just wanted you to come because he wants someone who agrees with him.
Well, you may be surprised.
Yes, I told him about our differences with being as objective as I know you would not have been, Mike, if you had been the one inviting him. But I gave him the freedom to choose whichever side makes the most sense to him.
Okay.
I did tell him that we were aligned on opposite sides of a divide.
Good.
And the two articles that we're going to talk about with a little more link to them bring us right back to that topic. But I thought we'd first get through the two TechCrunch articles, which were both really brief. So, okay. Mike, you sent out one on Figure AI skips the live demo and sidesteps BMW deal questions at a tech conference.
Yeah, so the reason I just flagged that one up is this is shows we're at peak hype. I'm always on the lookout for these articles, right? Where basically Figure AI has nothing. I guess they managed to build a couple of humanoid robots. They got a video of them in a BMW plant somewhere waving their hands around. And basically they're claiming a multi-billion-dollar valuation because they're like, okay, these robots are ready to go. You can just put them on the line and we've got the deal with BMW ready to go, right? And of course, when they start lifting the covers on the story now, all of a sudden it's like, well, the deal with BMW, we don't really want to talk about it yet. And people are saying, well, is it real money or not? And like, can't really talk about that. Where are the robots? Did you bring any to this conference to demo? Like, no, not really. And
Yeah,
so,
their answer to that was we demoed through videos. I thought that was
right. Remember that old video? Yeah, just go back and look at the video that we just had, right? So, this is clearly, and I think, like I said, we know as engineers, as tech doctors, we know that these robots are not ready to just throw on any kind of assembly line at an automotive plant. So, the idea that these guys, I mean, they're ready to do 100,000 robots a year or something. Like I said, they're trying to raise $1.5 billion at a almost $40 billion valuation compared to a $2.5 billion valuation from February 2024. So a company with nothing is now worth call it 10 times what they were a year ago. So these are the times.
Yeah.
So given that automotive companies, of course, have been pioneers of robotics, there are a lot of robots in automotive plants, but these particular robots are, I guess the sort of ones that you see on Boston Dynamics sort of videos that can do somersaults and things, and it's whether the industry is ready for those to add value. Yeah, is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, except they're not even as good as the one Boston Dynamics. Boston Dynamics is actually the leader in this field, and Boston Dynamics has got demos, right? They've played around this idea of having a robot in a warehouse. They've done demos. If anybody could do it, if there was a business case for a robot could do this, Boston Dynamics would be there, and it's not there yet, right? The robots are fiendishly expensive. They don't manipulate things like a human being, right? And so there's all these ifs. This is why they use robots like crazy in car factories, but they're not anthropomorphic, right?
Yeah, that's my take is I've been saying for a long time, who decided that the goal was to replicate human beings? I don't think that's the right goal at all. I think it's a sideshow, and to your point, Mike, I think that probably the hype from that has pushed things further than they really needed to go already. But a cantilever robot or a robot sitting on the floor with joints that are optimized for the environment in which they're going to work and the work they're going to do, those things are working out really, really well. And I think there's room for a heck of a lot more of that. But the idea that you're going to have humanoids walking around being able to sub in for humans, I think it's just a faulty hypothesis that's where the value is going to be. I think the value
And
is
you,
up.
and you could say the same thing for artificial general intelligence as well. I mean, who said that that was the goal? I mean, there's so much value on the journey today. Why is that such an important goal to achieve in the next sort of 6 months? I mean, nobody actually thinks it will happen. It's just too many challenges in front of it. But again, it's an arbitrary goal. The AI has many applications where it can add value way before it gets to that.
Well, the exciting value, right? When you're in the hype stage, the story is replacing people, right? And it's math
Yeah.
anyone can do, right? Oh, I can replace 20 UAW workers making 30 bucks an hour, right? So do the math, right? That's where it comes from, to your point. And again, I'll put in a plug for our podcast because this is where tech doctors come to save the day because we cut past the hype. We see through all the persiflage and bring truth to bear for the people.
We worked hard on our mission statement, and you were nowhere near as excited about it as you were just now. Okay, so another article you sent out was AI startups continue fueling San Francisco office recovery. And I wondered what
Yeah, the
implications.
only the only thing here is that ecosystem, right? We talk about, well, what's feeding the beast here, right? Why is there all this pressure around the hype, right? To Paul's point, why are people over promising and under delivering when there is value to be found, but they're all, got to go for these moonshots? Well, the game, I mean, San Francisco has empty office space, right? I mean, it's terrible downtown San Francisco, right? What's going on ever since COVID, the downtown has not recovered. And what this article says is that, well, they're getting partial recovery out of these AI startups. So, I mean, everyone has a vested interest in keeping the money flowing, right? And this is where you lose some of the objectivity and some of the skepticism because it's like, well, who wants to kill the goose that's laying the golden eggs, right? People are pouring billions, right, if not trillions of dollars into AI right now, and it's funding things like San Francisco real estate.
When ChatGPT first landed, that sort of quantum leap that was made in AI capability, I think took a lot of people by surprise.
Right.
And especially with the rapid rollouts where, I mean, it did improve as well very, very quickly because when it
Very
first
quick.
came out, it was great, but it hallucinated a lot and then it suddenly started to get its act together. And of course, people are thinking that, you've got a bit of Moore's law on steroids here, and AI is going to continue to improve at that sort of rate. And I think my position is it was probably a bit of a blip that leap because there are, if anything, forces very much against AI improving at that rate, and one of those forces is the proliferation of AI generated content that's now everywhere. It's going to become more and more difficult to train these AI algorithms, because they're just going to be training on stuff they've generated themselves, which we know leads to a diluted performance.
Wow.
And so rather than this sort of hockey stick of sort of evolution that's going to do to the singularity and result in Armageddon, we're actually going to reach a saturation point. And actually the signs are at the moment that latest releases are actually getting worse, not better on some measures. So I think there's a lot of over extrapolation, but as you say, Mike, the reason for that is because they want to keep the money flowing, and there is value there, but you need to find it. It's like a sort of you've got to find it in the noise, really, where the actual value is. There's probably going to be quite a bit of disappointment at some point over the next 12 months.
Mm.
So
Dang, I didn't expect him to be so well aligned with Mike. This is very disappointing, Paul.
well, Greg, that's where the facts and data lead you. I mean that, you just have to go where it takes you.
Here we go. Here we go. Okay, so I sent out an article titled "Thrive Holdings is Betting That AI Can Change IT Services." So I'll kick us off on this one. I think this is the heart of the discussion that we've been having around AI impact. And I've been on the side of there will be a tremendous impact, even on the workforce. It might not be lost jobs, but there will be some lost jobs and quite a few different jobs. But Mike and I both were CIOs, and so we know the IT world really well. And Mike, I'm sure you will agree that there are very many IT processes that can be automated. Virtually all of them, and we've been moving in that direction for decades, literally. And so AI coming along, being able to put a few bells and whistles on top to take the automation up a few levels is really not that revolutionary, but it will be profoundly impactful in terms of, I think, changing people's jobs. And I'll give some examples from a high level. IT has a customer service function. It's usually called the help desk, and that's already been basically replaced by AI. We have to do configuration.
That's a rebuttable presumption. So
Okay. I said pretty much, but yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Just so you know that I'm a little tense on that because that's a trick that Piers Morgan does, right? He'll make a
Yeah,
statement like that, like it's done. Everyone knows.
yeah.
But okay, I'm just saying that's a rebuttable presumption.
I wish I were as slick as him. But we'll go with 67%, which is the reigning number in terms of how much gets replaced by these things.
Again, rebuttable, but go ahead.
Well, there's an article in our list that uses that number. But we also do coding, which is clearly greatly assisted by AI. We've had the conversation about junior versus intermediate level programmer. But if you haven't used those things in a while, they've gotten frighteningly good in terms of generating good code. So those are obvious things, but along the lines of the next article review, we talk about human-centric jobs.
Well, hang on. Before we leave the article, you made quite a few statements.
No. I'm not done making. I'm going to make some more.
You're gonna make some more. So
yeah. I was just foreshadowing the article.
Because I see Paul's ready to leap in. He's coming back.
So, human-centric jobs like Mike, I'm thinking back on how we basically organize shop relationship management. That's a huge important function. There's people management, which is what everybody in leadership position does for at least part of their time. There's project management and there's product management. I just looked at those four and thought about what the AI implications are for them. And I think relationship management, I think AI will play a larger role. Well, no, I'm skipping. Yes, I think that tech workers are pretty bad, including me, are pretty bad at relationship management by nature. And I think we're pretty much further along than most on the spectrum. and tend to avoid social situations. And so we probably do relationship management wrong. And I think AI can probably help
Paul, let me ask you this.
in aligning
Is,
expectations.
is Greg Martin or is he not one of the most charismatic IT people you've ever met in your entire life?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, what is he going to say when you put it like that?
Oh, but I know too, because okay, I had a team. Greg came to work for me before he went on to become a CIO. He came to work for me at a company called Harman. And I had been with these people for months. And I thought they loved me. And Greg showed up. And they taught me what love could really be like. Okay. He charmed them within, I wasn't even, it was minutes. I wish I could say it was hours or days or weeks. They love him. So this is, I find this fascinating. This is man is saying we're all on the spectrum. We all have trouble dealing with people and stuff. I guess he might be the exception that proves the rule. That might be the case. But
I think I'm better, relatively speaking, but compared to the MBAs and those types of folks that I know, man, big drop off. All right, let me finish this so you guys can jump in. Regarding people management, we've had this conversation, Mike, and I do think that AI will play an important role in aligning expectations, assessing performance, developing smart goals. Regarding project management, I think there are already a lot of tools that help make project management easier using AI, like, well, not using AI, but using data science, like Monte Carlo simulations and critical path finders and different ways to use optimization. And finally, product management. I think these people's jobs are the most secure because they really do have to um, understand
understand and
customers
treat them.
from a people perspective to really get that proper feature list that's gonna grow your revenues. So I want to take it to Paul first because he and I have worked together at a company that I think interacted with specifically this issue of IT work being made easier with the AI or with technical tools, period. Um, and also, Paul, you've done some things directly with Raven lately that brought some of those tools to bear that I thought might be relevant, given that this article was the backdrop.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any question that it's going to make people more efficient. Um, just vibe coding in general is a revolution. The speed at which now you can code at is so much faster. But I I still don't think I know there's a lot of talk. When they started off with talking about eliminating jobs, and the idea that AI can replace developers, even just reduce the number of developers. I think it's one of these things where, yeah, the sort of the maybe the lower performing developers that have sort of done sort of rudimentary coding, there's a risk there. But I think that it's a tool, and it makes you more efficient, and it actually makes you a more powerful coder, and you can do more. And the question is if you get a coder that can do more, does that mean there's fewer opportunities for coders? I don't think there is. I just think you go faster, and everybody will go faster because everybody's got access to these tools. It's not a differentiator, and when that happens, then you just do more. It's not necessarily that you do more with fewer. You do more because you can, and so that's the question. And I don't think AI is yet at the stage where you can just say, right, here's this brief, go and do your, few AI development agents working together in sprints and then suddenly spurting out a perfect product that's going to, be a unicorn. It's not going to happen. It will do subroutines, small subroutines, and then it requires a coder to stitch them together. But even those subroutines that it's creating, you need the still need that human intelligence to figure out a what you want it to do, why you want it to do it, and also to guide it to make it more efficient because it won't make it efficient on its own unless you tell it to. If you just naively ask AI to code something, it actually doesn't come up with very good code. It may work, but it won't be the best code. You have to iterate still. And people think, oh yeah, but it will get to this sort of reasoning and there's all this chain of thought stuff and it'll figure it out eventually. Well, if you read Apple's paper from 2 days ago that they've just released, that whole chain of thought stuff is an illusion. And it is. It's theatre. It's not really chain of thought. These models still just predict the next word, but you can make it look like they're reasoning. And on certain apps or certain applications, it is. But it's not reasoning in the same way that humans reason, as anyone that's done vibe coding knows. You have to you have to sort of prompt it. And while you'd still need to prompt these things to deliver what you want it to deliver, then there's still going to be scope for employment. I think. I don't. Yeah. And the question I think is this going to be so radical that it eliminates a profound number of jobs? I don't know, maybe, but or is it just we're improving tools again, just like we did with steam engines, just like we did with electronics, just like we did with automation, better tools, and did that really eliminate in a mass elimination of jobs? Some jobs disappeared, but it also created a lot of new jobs, and I think that's I think there's higher likelihood that that's going to happen once we realize the limitations of AI and its advantages, that it'll create possibly more jobs than it eliminates.
Yeah, but the jobs it eliminates, there's going to be a generation that catches hell
Yeah,
because those people are not going to be able to reskill into the new jobs. That's the trouble.
that's the risk. Yeah,
I think that where the bar is going to be surprisingly low. I like what Paul said about lower performing coders. We usually use entry level coders as sort of a shorthand for that, Paul, to just say that seems to be about the level it's programming at, which in my mind also raises a question. Well, if you don't hire entry level programmers, how are they going to, where are you going to get the experienced coders you need to use the AI? How are these people going to get trained, right?
yeah,
So many good points in what you said. I wrote down a few, but one is like coming back to this article, Thrive Holdings betting AI can change IT services. See, when I look at the money that they're putting into these things and the valuations guys expect, and when they say productivity, they don't really mean, you know what, we believe AI is going to make a given programmer more productive, and that's where the big win is. These people are talking about head count. They think that they're the game, right? The same game where Greg and I used to work for GE. We know that game, right? You go in, you buy a company, you basically put in better processes, take out costs, and make a ton of money as a venture capitalist or a private equity guy, right? They think AI is the latest tool that's going to give them that. Back in our day, it was Six Sigma and stuff like that, right? That they were putting in. Now it's supposed to be this AI that's going to do it, and can IT services do it? And I just don't think the data is there to say that that's going to happen. I understand when Greg and I have this debate, right? He points to articles like this, like, well, Mike, look at all the smart VC money that's going after this. And I'm like, well, Greg, the smart VC money isn't smart enough to understand the limitations of the technology. So that's the
That's where excuse me, that's where I disagree. I
right.
disagree.
I know that we have it with that. That's fundamentally where where we start to disagree is right there. We also disagree
The,
on
the
the
smartest money will pay you to tell them about the limitations of AI.
I will keep coming back to that money. That money may be rich. It's not all that bright, and it certainly doesn't have
Oh,
the.
I'm saying because of the amount of money they buy bright from people like
Uh,
you.
well, then they're looking in the wrong places, from what I can tell. But anyway, like I said, we're not going to agree. We're going to
Well, we also
disagree.
said that we're not going to use this podcast to try to give investors advice. That would be silly of
Well,
us.
no, but I'm right. But lots of people do what you're doing and say, well, if the VCs are in, they hire smart people. They must know there's a pony in that barn somewhere. I'm going where they go, and sometimes they don't know. The other thing that we talk about is just how far we are from sort of that AGI, call it whatever. I think we've defined it, I think pretty well as saying we know what we're after, an AI that can operate like an experienced person, not 30 years experience, not 20, call it 5 to 8 years experience. And I think where I would say LLMs are never going to get there. Greg goes nuts when I say that. He's like, "How can you know?" He said, "Never." So I think where Greg would say there is a path, right? It may take a couple of, it may take a leap in capability, a new technique, but it will happen. And then the last debate we have is, well, when? And I keep pointing out to me, I'm saying VCs don't bet on 10, 20 years out. They think that whatever breakthrough is needed to replace that mid-level programmer is going to be in the next couple of years because VCs don't go out past that, right? They
Well,
don't have the
private equity goes way past that. So
Nah, private equity does not go way past that. The government does. If you want to do research and say something's going to be 10 years and it's a 50% chance of a payoff, that's government R&D. Private equity is not interested in that. They're
no,
not.
there's private equity that buys and holds, and they are interested in that long horizon because they make money the whole time.
Did you ever work? Greg, I was at Jaguar Land Rover when those guys came through to buy Jaguar Land Rover, okay? I was at Ford when they bought the guys that bought Hertz from us and sold it in the next 6 months for more
Yeah,
money than they paid.
that's
That
just a different flavor of private equity investor.
okay. I
There's lots of flavors. But anyway, so before we leave that article and go to the last one, do you guys, either of you have anything to say about the actual article?
Well, we did. I said I think they're wrong. I think they're dreaming. I know what they're after, right?
Right.
They're after that productivity game that they think, and they think this time instead of Six Sigma, it's AI that's going to give it to them, and I think they're toast.
They're a
Well,
consultancy that wants to support IT firms. Just want to make sure that that part is clear. Go ahead, Paul.
sorry, what was that, Greg?
They're a consultancy that's trying to sell services to IT management firms that enable them to be more efficient in their interactions with their customers. So I just wanted to be clear about what where they were positioned in the marketplace.
Well, I think there's a market there because I think we all agree that AI can make these services more efficient. You know, you can do a lot more now than you could sort of 3 years ago with these people. But I think coming back to the whole Moore's law again, I think that's what's driving current thinking is people think we're in a Moore's law situation where the speed of development over the past 18 months is going to be replicated and ongoing. And that's why people are predicting we'll hit AGI in the next 6 months, 12 months or whatever. And there's just a few data points here that I'll throw into the mix. And one is that several challenges along that way. One is hallucination. Okay, when ChatGPT first came out, hallucination levels were at like between 50 and 100%,
Mhm.
depending on what you're asking it to do. We think that that's come down now, and on certain tasks, if you look at the latest research, they're saying it's down to less than 2%. But actually, the LLMs are still hallucinating at 50 to 100%. What they've done is they've wrapped it with an agentic structure, and they're now agents using tools. And so when you ask ChatGPT a maths question or something that requires a fact or a citation, it will no longer try and do it through the LLM. It will go out and search the web, or it will use a calculator, or it will use a tool to answer that question because it now knows and understands its limitations. And if you think about it, for an LLM not to hallucinate, you would have to train it on every single conceivable human conversation that there is. And not only that, but validate and fact check every single sentence it's being trained on. That's never going to happen. So they're always going to hallucinate at 50%. And that's a limitation. It always has been of AI. That hallucination goes back to the stuff I was sort of publishing sort of 20, 25 years ago. And then the other thing was what I mentioned was this AI slop, the sort of the just profuse amount of AI generated content that's now online. And so future AI is now going to have to train on stuff it's generated. And we know that dilutes its performance. And so this idea of Moore's law, they've got no way of getting around it at the moment. It is going to saturate, and it'll probably saturate very quickly given those limitations. But we're still in this roller coaster of what's happened over the last 18 months, and everybody's predicting it's going to proceed at the same speed. And it might, but for how long? I don't think it can do it indefinitely. It will at some point
So,
start to struggle to overcome those challenges.
So Paul, I think this is so many good points as usual when the one about the idea that now they're training on data that's been generated by AIs. What do you think about this the synthetic data thing, right? Where they're saying, well, we've run out of data. There's no more data on the web to scrape, but thanks to AI, we can generate the data we need to train. Is that related, or are these independent thoughts for you?
Yeah, I mean that's still AI generated data, isn't it? It's
Hmm.
it's still not. I mean, to get artificial general intelligence, you have to be able to extrapolate. And the one thing that neural nets have never been able to do, and with the current architectures can't do is extrapolate. The only way that you can get um, not non-hallucination is to eliminate the possibility of extrapolation. And to do that, you have to train it on everything. When I um, was researching this 25 years ago, 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, and I was looking at applying AI in safety critical control systems. I was sat on a plane flying to the US, and I'd been raising concerns about the dangers of using AI in safety critical control systems. And I was reading this article that one of the big aircraft manufacturers, I can't remember if it was Boeing or Airbus, was actually now using AI to control the engine. And this was not long after 9/11, and people were scared of flying anyway. And this sort of sent shivers down my spine that there was potentially an AI controlling the engine on the plane I
Hmm.
was on.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I decided to look into it, and so I found that it was true, but what they were doing was they were maybe just two variables they were manipulating on the engine, maybe
Hmm.
fuel flow and oxygen and fuel
Hmm.
to the or airflow and fuel, and maybe controlling thrust or whatever it was. And in order to validate that neural net, they had to spend in a lab 6 months testing the jet engine
Hmm.
from every possible combination of airflow and fuel, and then measuring what the control variable was, and then basically collecting all the data and then training the model on that. And then they had these tests that were based on some fancy mathematics that could test that if you generated a point here and another point there, and then you asked the neural net to predict in the middle of that it didn't have any data, it could calculate whether it would hallucinate or not.
Right.
And if it did hallucinate, then the test would fail. What
Right.
they'd have to do is they'd have to generate the data at much greater granularity.
Hmm.
So instead of maybe 1% increments on either axis, they'd now have to go 0.5%. They do the whole thing again, and they would do it until it passed,
Hmm.
guaranteeing that it would never hallucinate.
Hmm.
That made me feel better that,
Hmm. Hmm.
some AI there that wouldn't
Yeah.
hallucinate. But if you think that's the extent that they went
Great
to make
example.
sure that you had a neural net that you could
Well, it was
rely on,
interpolating. They had to prove it was interpolating, that
it
it
was
was never
interpolating, not
extrapolating, right? By
extrapolating.
definition, they had to capture that entire surface that they were modeling, right?
Yeah,
That must have
yeah,
been nonlinear. They couldn't use it.
yeah,
They felt for some reason it was more effective to model than the neural net, but they had to show it was interpolating.
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's the limiting factor that we're sort of ignoring at the moment.
Well, the other thing that bothers me is when they say, "Oh, we know," like when you say you're putting, you know that this LLM underneath is hallucinating at 50%, so you put this agent on top. Now, to me, that's a hack on a kludge because the agent, to me, is some rule-based thing, right? That they're saying, and I'm like, well, that's just regular old rule-based engines. There's nothing, they're trying to make it sound like, oh, no, no, we've combined this thinking machine with this other thinking machine, and now we've got double the IQ. And it's like, no, you put this LLM that was hallucinating, threw on some rule engines, and got it to handle, like you said, a few specific math problems that it couldn't do before and claim victory. Right. And again, they really scares me is whenever they do that stuff, they go, and intelligence emerged. Right.
Or advanced. Yeah, so this is where we jumped off early in this discussion, Mike, because you were talking about Sam Altman's claim that he would be at GAI in a certain number of time. And what he really said was, I can see a pathway to it. And you interpreted it as this guy's guaranteeing, and you went further than
He
just saying,
said, he said, I know how to build it. And I took it as he meant like, yeah, now. And Greg said,
yeah,
he
yeah.
meant someday in the future. I said, that is a very generous interpretation of what Sam
No,
Altman.
it's a factual
I,
interpretation. But the
I,
other thing that
yeah,
the other constraint you put on him based on that statement was that he had to use LLM exclusively. And I
no,
was
I did,
like,
see,
Mike, he
you
can use
straw
whatever
manning
he
me. You're
likes.
straw manning me. What I said was, he said that based on his latest models, which is his O1, O2, O3 things that he's got, he's like, I can get there now. We have solved this. He had moved on. He was talking about AI super intelligence. Now,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
you being Sam, actually, I admire Greg. He's actually trying to get OpenAI as a sponsor. And if I keep talking about him like I do, we'll never get him. but they love Greg. Greg is the super apologist for Sam. Sam, you out there? We could use some.
And I want to do a little consulting for Sam, but my dream job is Tesla's CEO. I feel like it's going to be open relatively soon, but I could be dreaming. I don't know.
That's just like when I think someone called me one time and said I want to be a Ford that I want to be the CIO at Sears, and I was like, I'd rather jump off a building. I was like, no.
So my point was that, and to your point, Paul, about the Moore's law, if we're talking about, the Moore's law applies to a single technology evolving over time. So the Moore's law applied to chips.
Yeah.
Chips got more dense, they were able to deal with more energy, and they were able to do it more transistors, more floating point operations per second. And that doubled or tripled or whatever it was supposed to do in the time frame that it was supposed to do it, and it was fascinating to watch. But
And we've been
AI is
riding that curve. We've been riding that curve for longer than anybody thought we could. But it's based on
agreed,
physics. It's based on physics. But what
agreed.
these knuckleheads did was they went to straight to analogy land and said, "Oh, well, this AI stuff is based on chips, and therefore those capabilities are also subject to Moore's law." Which was and they had to Paul's point, they saw it, right? The jump from Chat GPT 3 to 4 was like boom, right? It just went like one, two, three, it went bam like that. They're like, there you go, the data's there. There was no connection to the physics underneath. There's no physics under that. Somebody just made it up off the top of their head.
But my point is that with the kinds of claims that are being thrown about regarding AI, they're talking about the whole family of technologies that surround AI. That's the way I interpret it. And so
You
I
think that family of technologies follows Moore's law?
I wouldn't use Moore's law to define the pathway. So I'm starting off agreeing with you, Paul, that that's not the right use of it, and agreeing with you, Mike, that that's not right use of the law. But I'm not going to accept limitations on the capabilities of AI related tools and the growth of such. I think that agentic AI is a really important first step that really wasn't talked about a few months back when we were talking about this, Mike. It was talked about in papers and things like that. It wasn't talked about in the press at all. But here it is, and it's like 1.0, literally. And
Yeah.
so the idea of using AI, using LLMs as tools at multiple points in a business process, a system, a whole new product for helping human beings do things, we have not scratched the surface. And I don't think any law is guiding the development of that, nor do I think any law is holding it back.
I think agentic AI is really important, and a lot of people are talking, well, everybody's talking about agentic AI now and multi-agent systems, but they're mainly talking about it from a automated workflow without human intervention perspective, which is great. But I actually look at it as it's one of the mechanisms for mitigating some of these challenges that I've talked about. So we've seen that it mitigates some of the hallucination issues by wrapping LLMs around an agentic structure. And then, having, I mean, the idea that you can put an LLM on a massive data lake full of complex, nuanced data and expect the AI to figure it out has always been a bit of a stretch. But in an agentic architecture, it makes a lot more sense because you have domain expertise around certain agents, and we move away from sort of data pipelines and data flow more to information exchange between agents, which I think is a much more sensible way of trying to solve problems than just pushing all the data to the cloud and then expecting a single LLM to figure it out. That really is a stretch, and we'd have to have a few escalations of Moore's laws for that to actually work. But in an agentic architecture, I think we've already seen that agents working together collaboratively can do some amazing things.
And
Paul,
can you
you're
tell
the
us?
most capable, real quick, Mike, you're the most capable expert we've talked to about this stuff. Can you please tell me that SAP and Oracle are in trouble because of AI? Please say they are.
Um, well, I think all SaaS company, I wouldn't put, I know they're not a SaaS company, but they're all trying to get to the cloud, aren't they?
Yep.
I think the whole sort of traditional approach to enterprise architectures is I wouldn't say under threat, but is potentially going to be disrupted. So that traditional architecture that these companies have spent millions and millions on of, you've got your data in disparate data sources, that's no good. It's all siloed. So what you do is you put in an ETL layer, you bring it all in, you aggregate it in the cloud in a data lake, and then you have on top of the data lake, you have the analytics application AI layer, and then you have the sort of the UI layer on top of that, and it's all cascaded upwards like an ISA 95 type architecture. And and the idea was you spend millions on those sorts of platforms and architectures, and then you start looking for all these great use cases that can leverage this
Right.
fantastic AI and data. And people are scratching their heads thinking, right, well, what are those use cases? And do we really need to store all this data in the cloud? And of course, the push for that was all this thinking sort of years ago, a few years ago, that eventually storage of data in the cloud would be free because the cost is going to come down so much. And all SaaS companies know it's far from free.
Yeah.
If anything, it's getting more and more expensive. And so,
Same with
agentic
cloud
architectures,
computing.
they turn that on its head because there is less of a need now to push data to the cloud. If you've got an agent that's sat where the data is, that can understand all the nuances, fine tune itself to it, understand it in a lot more detail, and then exchange information to the ecosystem, then
Yeah.
keep the data where it is. There'll still always be use cases for aggregated data in the cloud for big data sort of analytics, but that'll be more use case driven than
Backups
platform
and
driven.
things.
And so, yeah, there's definite threats to the SAPs and the Oracles of their traditional thinking on enterprise architectures, and all SaaS companies. They're going to have to go agentic in order to, and what does that look? And that creates a whole host of new challenges. How do these agents collaborate effectively together? It's difficult to get humans to collaborate. If you've got agents that are programmed in it by companies that are in the winner takes all mindset and zero sum game, then you're going to get phenomena occurring in agentic architectures that you get in the human world, where collaboration is a great idea but difficult to achieve in practice.
That's a great segue for the last topic. But Mike, I think you wanted to chime in first.
No, no, that's good. No, no, I don't have anything to add there. Beautifully, beautifully stated.
Okay, so you sent the final article, Mike. Klarna changes its AI tune and again recruits humans for customer service. Um, what jumped out at you about this one? And in my little notes, I wrote, as if it wasn't obvious.
This is the counterpoint to the article you just put in.
Right.
This guy, this CEO went all in, baby. He went all in for AI. He put all the chips on. He bought in. He was best buds with Sam Altman. He was like, we're gonna let go half the people. This is the future of the company. He went
67%, and he actually
all
did let them go.
all in. He did, and now and like I said, and they even had to be fair to them, they did the metrics right. They had a help desk app. They did before and after. Look, we're closing tickets faster, and cheaper or whatever, less people and all that. And now they've turned around and said, nope. Well, they're saying both the usual thing, right? They can't let the CEO lose face completely on this thing. So they're saying, look, we haven't changed our internal commitment to AI, and we're still hiring, we're putting in AI than hiring people. Then they say, but the people we're hiring a bunch of contractors. So bottom line is they're
That
busy.
was a weird. That was the weirdest part to me. I really, really didn't understand
Well,
what was
again,
going on.
Craig, they can't look. The CEO can't look stupid. He's running a multi-billion-dollar company here. You
Mhm.
can't hang him out to dry. He's your CEO. Well, some you could, but I guess they decided to keep him around, which means you got to spin this thing positive, right? So you can't say it was an utter disaster. It failed. And by the way, this is a counterpoint to your point about empathy, because they said
Yes.
we needed empathy. Even as bad as our IT help desk was with their on the spectrum butts, they're still better than the AI tool that we put in place.
Well, that was my question about the article was who guarantees that all humans have empathy?
They
Um,
didn't say all they said
so
was
they're hiring specialized people to be empathetic. and they didn't hire those kinds of people to run the help desk. They
Well, I
hired
think what they're
people
saying is
minimum wage
before though, but before they said this is the complaints they weren't getting from customers. So hidden behind those were closing tickets faster and all that was
Yeah,
they were rising customer sat measures, right? Their
I
customer.
hate this. Thank you very
Right,
much.
right, exactly. The other one was there was an interesting anecdote from somebody who had tried it out and said, this thing did a really good job of getting me to the help desk quicker. Right. It was
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
it's like if
That-
the answer, it tries to pull up the manual, and if read the manual doesn't work, it feeds you to the person. And this is where it gets really interesting, Greg, because you and I know how people play games with these help desk metrics, right? If you say, well, at that point, when you pass it over to the human person, the AI closes the ticket. Well, your closed ticket metric looks great, right? But you and I know the
That's not the
customer.
closed ticket. That's the
Thank you.
response time.
Thank you. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's also a psychological element to this as well, because we know that in certain use cases, AI outperforms humans. But if you're getting a medical consultation and an AI can predict better than a highly trained sort of medic in that field, you're still going to want to get reassured by the medic, even though they only achieve 80% accuracy and the AI achieves 90%. Just like if you were flying in a plane and the AI, you could prove that the AI was sort of 99% safe and or 99.99% safe, and actual pilots were, only 99% safe. You'd still want a pilot in the cockpit.
Not necessarily,
So,
Paul. Waymo.
yeah,
We're doing it in cars now. People are putting their, they're not getting good, nice numbers like 99.9%. They're getting way worse numbers than that. And they're still putting themselves in the car with their kids.
yeah,
I don't think people know. We talk about being crash test dummies for these people. We're their beta testers. And the politicians who are supposed to be protecting us aren't. The politicians bought into the tech people who said, we guarantee this car is not going to do worse than a human driver. They're like, oh, bet. I can tell my constituents that.
yeah,
Did they say, well, can you prove that? And the tech guy goes, I could prove it to you, but it's very technical, a lot of data and stuff. You don't want to see that. Just trust me. And the politicians, up until these things started crashing, said, fine. Now they started crashing. Now they're like, well, hang on. Sorry, we got to dig in because again, our constituents are complaining.
yeah. In the Klarna example, if you think about what actually happened, whether it's true or not, he's still saying that he hasn't got rid of AI. He's
Right.
still using AI. He's just brought people back in now, but to do the empathy role.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, and so it's that sort of shift in skills rather than complete
Yes.
replacement.
But
And
also, Paul, he's saying what you said, which is that we think it's working with the AI, not replacing, right?
yeah,
They shift the rhetoric toward more what you're saying. Hey, this is a tool that's going to help us, not we're dialing back on this. We're going to whack half the heads, right? We got to like Greg said, whatever, call it two, one third, and they're like, okay, that's enough.
yeah,
It's kind of like
and
outsourcing a little bit. We got those cost savings because we were dealing with a much less skilled workforce. And
Hmm.
escalation saved us.
Hmm.
And that's what
yeah,
we're
and,
doing now.
and
We're taking the sort of lower tier jobs and automating them with a pathway up to a real solution provider. I'm sorry, Paul.
and I know this is no consolation to individuals that are in those lower tier jobs, but there was another story, and I think it was Salesforce, where they laid off like 75% of their HR department and replaced it with AI. But what they did was they took the savings and they reinvested it in higher value positions than just sort of the admin that the HR did. And at the end of the year, their actual headcount had increased. So I mean that's not necessarily going to happen every time, but it shows that it's potentially a shift rather than a complete replacement where we need to think about a universal basic income for everyone because nobody's going to have any
You know,
employment.
Paul, man, I'm here with you. You just said my line, man. I agree, right? People who are displaced by technology, by innovation, we owe them UBI, right? My example would be coal miners. I'm like, look, we've decided as a society that we can't afford coal anymore. It's polluting the planet, right? It causes global warming. It's highly dangerous. It's dirty. It does a lot of bad things. But we understand you coal miners need to make a living. So
Mm.
here's UBI for you. Sorry, we've made the right choice. Innovation, displacement, everything. But we don't just say, well, sorry, you've been washed up on the shores of disruptive innovation, bad luck to you. We need to say to those people, here's something for you while you figure out what you want to do next. And
Yeah,
that's
and
a
give
hard
them
thing.
obviously the opportunity to retrain as well and
Yeah,
sort of
but it's hard,
participate.
right? They look, they had gone into coal country and started retraining those people on computer jobs and stuff. First of all, these people are like, look, I'm sorry, I'm a coal miner, right? I got a high school education. I didn't like science in high school. I don't want to be a programmer, right? Now they had started moving the needle a little bit, and then of course Mr. Trump came along and said coal's beautiful and bringing back coal, and then they said, okay, job done. I'm going to go back to digging coal again. But there's a lot of stories like that, and certainly as the technology gets better, right? The bar on human intelligence gets raised, right? Because the jobs where you could just turn your brain off and just do the same thing every day, there, you can't, the bar gets raised, right? You try to find that job and you think you can just be on autopilot for 30 years until you retire. Those jobs disappear quicker than you think, right? The jobs where you can have to think.
Yeah, but that of course that's not new. I mean that
No,
can
it's
happen
it's not.
since the first industrial revolution.
Yeah.
Yes, but
And the second
the
one.
thing about AI was though that somehow became so no, 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 we're there now, right? Yes, it's not slow, it's not come. This AI is a quantum leap thing now. We're literally, and this is where all the AI apocalypse stuff came from. Oh, every mid-level job is at risk now. You name a mid-level job and it's at risk. And I was like,
It really did feel that way just about a month ago, 2 months ago. It really
not
did
to
feel that
me.
way.
See, not
Yeah.
to me, because my experience with AI was the first time I played with ChatGPT, I had to do some coding for me, and it was so good. I was like, do an X squared. Give me a routine that computes X squared. Bang. Give it to me in C. Give it to me in Java. Give it to me in Python. I was like, oh my God, there must be people behind this thing. It's too good, right? But then when I put it together, I was like, well, wait a minute. Everybody on the planet has done routines to compute X squared. This thing is just pulling it out. So I said, okay, I know. At the time, I happened to be working on an interface between two enterprise level software packages that I knew hadn't been done. And I gave that to ChatGPT, and it came back with a beautifully worded generic approach to how I could code it up. It couldn't come back with code because it hadn't been done. And that's when I said, I'm safe because I know what I'm working on ain't hasn't been done. And I just had the same experience 2 days ago with, and I hate doing anecdotal stuff, but just very quickly, I needed a routine to compute availability out of mean time between failure and mean time to repair. And ChatGPT gave me this beautiful bunch of Python code, and a core part of it was just flat out wrong. It was the wrong equation, and it was the wrong answer. So what I did, I said, well, thank you very much for the framework, good old ChatGPT. I'm going to plug in the right algorithm, and now I'm good to go. But it was just flat out wrong because there aren't
Mm.
that many people computing the reliability of K out of N G repairable systems.
Yeah, and it won't get it in one shot. It can get it eventually, but you're in the loop then because you're guiding it. And
I'm
I've done
giving it
exactly
my
the same
knowledge.
calculation, and I got it and it nailed it, but it did take around 7 or 8 iterations.
Do you guys use the I forget the name of the function, but it makes your uh prompts and responses kind of separate from the training data. It's a little spaced circle on the upper right hand corner. You click that and you get a private chat. You guys don't use that?
It's
So you
in
just
ChatGPT.
yeah, ChatGPT.
You have to
So
pay for it. Is that in the paid version, not the free version, maybe?
might not be in the free version. I pay for mine, but I was just wondering, so you guys don't have concerns about you guys are not asking ChatGPT, help me find a birthday gift for my wife. You're asking really high level, important questions that are probably going to challenge it, and that in working through it with you guys, it's going to learn. Are you
Yeah.
comfortable being we talked about not wanting to be test dummies in the car. We all agree on that. But are you guys comfortable with your queries becoming part of the Chat GPT sort of data?
Well, if I'm asking it to figure out mean time between failure or mean time to repair, I'm quite happy with that because there's nothing sort of That's just trying to get it to do some code. But absolutely, if I was researching something new and confidential, then I would be, very concerned, and I'd definitely be clicking that button at the top, but still questioning, can I trust it?
Do you think you would be rare in this regard, or do you think everybody has this level of awareness about the potential risks of having your
No,
stuff?
no, I think people are just typing everything in there.
Yeah,
reckon it's a treasure trove of information.
yeah, yeah. If Altman or someone on his team were to ever, cross over into evil territory, um,
Yeah.
geez, that's useful data to mess with people.
Yeah, I'm not giving ChatGPT anything other than my queries. I don't like with the code I fixed. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to put this up on Git now with a big note. Here's the code that ChatGPT wrong, and here's how I fixed it. Now you have the answer. KLNG. No, I don't give them anything. Keep it
I
from,
think it interprets your next prompt as how it uses the data.
yeah.
And I think if I were designing it, if you didn't respond at all to the last code that I gave you, I would assume that did the trick.
Right, which is great. I don't mind that because that's actually wrong, right? The last code it gave me was wrong, and I didn't go back and say, "Hey, ChatGPT, here's what you did wrong. Why don't you rewrite this line of code for me?" I was like, "Oh, thank you very much. I'll fix it. Bye."
I think I and most people like me will keep to your point earlier, Paul, about you have to kind of refine the answers and work towards a better solution. Um, I don't stop responding until I get what I want, and then I
Yeah.
cut and paste in where I need it and use it.
Yeah. And I think that's another challenge I talk about on the path to artificial general intelligence and enterprise general intelligence, as I call it, is if a C-level executive has to rely on a $300,000 a year prompt engineer and a data scientist in order to get the information that they need, then A, that's not scalable.
Mhm.
And you got to question whether, a prompt engineer on $300,000 using AI is actually better than just getting somebody at $100,000 who can do it without AI. Depending on what the task is, we have to get to the point where you can ask in plain English and get an insightful, actionable insight back. And if we can achieve that, then we've nailed it. This whole idea that prompt engineering is going to be this new skill that everybody
Yeah.
should be training for, then I think that's not very exciting for me.
What scares me is that that just presumes the answer's in there somewhere, right? And back
Yeah.
to your point around interpolation versus extrapolation, you're betting the answer's in there when you may be asking it to extrapolate. The
Yeah.
answer isn't in its training data set, right?
So
So,
you
and
have
I'll
to
go
have
back
that
to my
knowledge to
yeah,
supplement it.
and I'll go back to my example again. Like I said, I was doing work that I knew no one had worked on before. So I knew there wasn't an answer in there. So all the prompt engineering in the world was not going to get me code to connect the two pieces of software that I was trying to connect.
Unless you gave it the answer.
Thank you. Thank you. But that's not prompt engineering at that point. That's straight up here. Here's the code.
Yeah.
My problem with prompt engineering is the name. I don't think there's any engineering at all involved in prompt engineering. I don't think there's anything really. I've never seen the analytical work
But this is what happens.
associated with making this the correct
But
prompt.
that's because that's what the hype machine wants to do, though. It takes nothing and they know if they put the right words on it, it'll sound like it's something. If they said this is prompt guessing, no one would be interested. We're going to train you. I've got a seminar on prompt guessing. Nobody would pay for it. You call it prompt engineering, and this actually scares me about this term agentic. Because when we say agentic, we know what we mean, right? We know exactly the box that we're saying that stuff fits in. When other people hear the word agentic, they hear agents. And when they hear agent, they're like, oh, like a customer service agent. It's going to be, again, they're right back to people.
Well, I
These
think some people
people sitting,
are referencing the Matrix when they hear agent, and they pretty much got it nailed with what it means.
that's a stretch, but okay. And even then, Mr. Anderson, right, or whoever, who's the
Mr. Anderson was
yeah,
the world's
that
greatest.
was Neo, but who was the other
Oh
guy?
yeah, you're right. The guy that kept saying that.
Yeah,
What
the
was it?
guy, I can't, what was his name? But yeah, but he was yeah, right. He was the ultimate AI, right? He could go toe to toe with any human being.
Yeah, and win. Okay. Well, we are
Wow, this
out
has
of
been
time.
awesome. Oh my
Uh,
God.
Paul's stretching his neck. He didn't know what he was signing himself up for.
I was
Um,
just looking at my clock.
Yeah, no, perfect timing. Man, we're getting good at clocking this too.
this was really, really great. And so I'm going to say the outro, and then you guys can say whatever you want. My outro is thank you for watching the Tech Doctors or listening to the Tech Doctors podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. And now you get to listen to the really wonderful music that we have at the end of the show. Go ahead, guys.
Our final thoughts, is that what you're saying?
If you want to, or you can just sign off. Up to you.
Yeah, no, it's just been a pleasure. Sort of greatly appreciate it. Anytime you want me back, just give me a shout.
And
Thank you,
Paul, where are
Paul.
you located?
We'll have
You
you
in the
back a lot.
UK?
I'm based in the UK, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for staying up late for us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I
No
really
worries.
appreciate it, Paul. You did a great job, by the way.
Thank you.
Sam, we're gonna make sure Sam cuts you a piece of the money that he's gonna give us.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. I'll be waiting.
I got to find another expert that lines more closely with my point of view.
There you go.
You just ruined me for the next 6 to 9 months, Paul. I'll
Yeah,
never.
hey Greg, you remember when Paul was on and Paul said, "Wait a minute, let me play that. Let me play that part back. I got it on
Well,
video."
something I always have to emphasize after these discussions, I am a fan of AI.
Yeah.
Been with it for 30 years. It's just
Yeah.
I have to manage expectation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, oh my God, I we got to end on that note. Oh my God,
Yes. That's perfect.
thank you, Paul. Thank you.
Thanks a lot,
Thanks,
Paul.
Greg.